Before this video begins, I must address recent events, particularly the release of my MGSV video. I received many hate comments on that video regarding one particular aspect, and I can only assume that this is because Metal Gear is a politically divisive series, and people just assumed that I was on their side, and then when they actually started watching the video, they were confused and felt betrayed. So, in order to alleviate that, I've made two changes. A, cross-dressing harder so that no one can get confused, and B, making some slight adjustments to my intro. I couldn't find my copy of Tears of the Kingdom, but I just grabbed a second copy of Breath of the Wild because it's basically the same thing. Now that that's out of the way, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was the first video game I ever played. It had perhaps the biggest influence any piece of art ever had on my growing brain, as it is a game about growing up. The literal coming-of-age story, Ocarina of Time is the quintessential fantasy experience, engrossing the player for dozens of hours in a world filled with equal parts joy and despair, wonder and horror, new beginnings, and tragic endings. Hyrule Field is introduced as the title screen. The game's haunting, somber, yet comforting theme is played over Hyrule Field at night, adult Link riding Epona through the sunset. The build-up to Hyrule Field after the game starts is incredibly important. After an incredibly somber scene where Link's father figure is dead, and while all the members of the village Link grew up in mourn his loss, Link has no time to grieve, as he has been forced into a situation he never asked for and is by no means ready for, to save the entire kingdom of Hyrule and speak to the princess of the kingdom. Just before he's able to leave his childhood home for the very first time, Saria, the only girl who ever treated him with respect, stops him to give him a keepsake, an ocarina. She pleads with Link to remember her before he tears himself away, only able to bring himself to leave by sprinting at full speed from his past. And on the other side of the darkness, a seemingly small path, just one tree and some tall rock walls. The camera centers back around the player, only to reveal a massive expanse entirely unparalleled in any game released up to that point. It's really impossible to overstate how much of an impact Hyrule Field would have had to a gamer in the 90s. Its vast expanse unparalleled in all of video games. On top of the sheer awe that was inspired just by existing in this space, with the game's next primary objective immediately in view, dwarfing all other aspects of the skyline. There's also a hill in the center, making the field appear larger as you approach it and seeing the vast expanse of the world below the summit, making the field that much more vast without actually increasing the amount of time it takes to traverse it. Additionally, the minimap does a lot of work here. It takes up the same amount of space as it did in the Kokiri Forest and the Lost Woods, but therefore the movement of Link on the screen is scaled, and we move so much less, really selling the incomprehensible scale of the area. Hyrule Field acts as a center of the map, an ever-present representation of the size of the Hyrule, as each of the game's major areas are simply tiny branches hanging off the end of this one massive area. It takes a shockingly small amount of time to actually traverse through Hyrule Field, although the player is likely to be met with the demonstration of this game's meaningful day-night cycle on their first run. For 230 seconds, the world is day, but for 80 seconds, the world shifts to night, skeletons rising from the underground as the gates to our objective close, making the player feel helpless and swarmed. Even if the challenge posed by the skeletons is more or less non-existent, the fear that sets in as our lifeline is cut off and the safe hub of the Kokiri village is replaced by the obviously dangerous world of the outside, our first step into adulthood and responsibility, verily demonstrating to us that we are plainly unprepared for the task that lies ahead. It's haunting. We spend very little time in Hyrule Field relative to the significance that it feels like. Our quest at the start of the game is to go from the Lost Woods entrance to Hyrule Castle Town. We revisit the area to go to Kakariko Village, and then return to the Lost Woods to get through to Dodongo's Cavern, then go to Zora's Domain. We travel a remarkably small distance of Hyrule Field in the main quest, although there is obviously the carrot on the stick that is the massive Lon Lon Ranch, where we can learn Epona's song, which is seemingly useless. After the time jump, we return to Hyrule Field, where we once again spend practically no time in it. Of course, now we can retrieve Epona, who can only be used in the field, and also makes the field effectively meaningless. Epona's speed makes Hyrule Field's previous daunting nature an afterthought, perfectly representing the loss of innocence that comes with age and the small feeling the world can have. The shifting relationship between the player and Hyrule Field is emblematic of Ocarina's strongest feature, its atmosphere. The wonderful soundtrack, the growing list of unique and believable enemies and characters, the charming low-quality graphics that let the player fill in the gaps with their imagination really felt like a childhood classic. The first song that Link learns as an adult is the Minuet of Forest, which allows him to fast travel to the end of the Lost Woods whenever we so choose, making it clear to the player that Hyrule Field will only have to be traversed sparingly, with fast travel points being awarded before the dungeon even starts. Hyrule Field is no longer a representation of the vast world that Tiny Link is a part of, but a roadblock that is occasionally wandered through. The northwest section of Hyrule Field is never utilized, but we do go further throughout the south, although with the help of Epona, this is hardly a blip in the journey. The nature of the field that once seemed utterly insurmountable and daunting become just another step in our journey as we grow stronger and more branches from the trunk of Hyrule Field are opened up to us with new items and new methods of transportation. On top of this, Hyrule Field is given its only incentive to explore explicitly as a side quest just to earn extra money. Once you complete the entire thing, you unlock an extra bottle, of course, but the player doesn't know that. They know that Hyrule Field is just as barren as it seems, being able to run around in circles to catch ghosts. Ghosts specifically help make the field feel barren and alive simultaneously. The Poes, as they're referred to as, literal manifestations of hate, represent adult Hyrule Field, and they can only be found at night. This makes nighttime in Hyrule Field less of a desperate play for survival and more of an active hunt, patrolling the field at night to find money. You can truly feel like the hero of Hyrule, eradicating hate from the world. And of course, this was the title screen. The player has the experience that literally defines the game, the sense of wonder and exploration that is embodied by the field and its relationship to the player. Its entire job is to be intermediary, literally a liminal space in the objective definition of the word. There is a single NPC in the entire field, and yet, despite the relatively small amount of time spent in it, it feels momentous, perfectly demonstrating Ocarina of Time's greatest qualities through our shifting relationship with it throughout. I feel like I should end the video on a joke, but I forgot to include jokes in this video already because I really like talking about Zelda. It's probably for the best, considering that, I'm not very funny. Allow me to demonstrate that by ending on the same joke I started with. We can walk until the sun burns out, we can walk for clouds.